Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Winfield United Church and our service for this summer Sunday, July the 18th. We are so glad that you found us today to come into a time of reflection and contemplation, to sing and to pray, to share our joys and our celebrations and our burdens as well with one another. For whatever reason you've come today, we are glad that you are here and welcome. On that note, I just want to take a moment to introduce any guests that we have with us. I welcome back Kathy Swanson, first-time Zoom attender, and she was an in-person attender before COVID arrived. So it's really great to reconnected with you this past week, Kathy. Welcome. Are there any other visitors in the gallery that would like to be introduced at this time? If not, we will turn our attention to announcements for this week for our community. So my holiday schedule, this coming week will be my last week in the office, and next Sunday, my last Sunday of leadership. I will be gone for 3 weeks, so I will leave July 26th, but I will be back to you in the office on August the 17th. And many thanks to Bob Thompson for agreeing to graciously provide emergency pastoral care in my absence. So should a need arise, please get in touch with Bob. Next Sunday, we will celebrate communion before I go on summer holidays. So you're invited to bring your own elements once again, and we'll share in that together. Sunday, August the 1st, we will have a very special guest joining us from Vancouver, Reverend Gary Patterson, recently retired after 44 years of ordered ministry. And Gary was settled to Winfield United Church some 44 years ago. And some of you in the Zoom room were here when he arrived and have really, I'm sure, fond recollections of Gary's ministry with you all. So I know we will have a good showing and a good turnout on August 1st, and welcome Gary to our midst for his reflection. So this Sunday we are doing the service without Verina's technical assistance, but I have next best, I have Karen helping me today. So thank you, Karen, for agreeing to do that. Instead of centering words being provided on a screen, I will share them in the chat box with you during the quiet meditation time. So a good way to utilize that feature. So you will find my centering words for you all during that time in the chat box. Another announcement I want to make, and maybe, I'm not sure if Kathy's prepared to speak to it or not, but there's an exciting yoga adventure happening in our kind of Oyama community this coming next 3 Wednesday evenings. So Kathy is leading a yoga adventure that starts this Wednesday evening, 7 o'clock on the grassy field at Kaloya Park. And there's 2 further Wednesdays. The next Wednesday following will be behind Gatsky's Orchard. And the 3rd week will be up the Spion-Cop Trail, up the Old Mill Road access. Is that right, Kathy? Did I describe that properly? Good. Okay, that's great. So maybe, Kathy, if you want to put your contact info in the chat box at some point, if people are interested, they can find out more information from you. So are there any other announcements that need to be shared with the community at this time? More of Sophie's CDs, I believe, are going to be on the way, hard copies. So you are welcome to call the church and place your order. $15 a copy with thanks to the Hartwick family and to Mike and Margaret for making that project possible. And it's a beautiful rendition. Some of you I know, I'm sure, are enjoying it already. So maybe think of spreading that gift around with friends and family in your travels this summer. And the yellow or the orange shirt buttons have been ordered. They just have not arrived yet. So in the event they don't come this week while I'm here, Verena will notify you all when they arrive in August for pickup. So with that said, I'm going to invite us to unmute our microphones and share with one another your God moments from the past week or recent memory that you would like to tell us about.
Well, it might be a time to tell folks that Harvey Walmsley, who we've been praying for, he passed away on Thursday morning, which was a blessing. So, a very fine man.
Thank you, Bob. Our thoughts are with Harvey's family and friends, and you in particular as well, Bob.
Thank you.
We had a God moment yesterday. We had friends come by for coffee, and it was actually 3 other couples. The women, the 4 women, had back in, our children were all preschoolers. We used to ski together. We used to work it out so that there would be one who would look after 7 children for the day, and the other 3 of us would have a wonderful time up at Silver Star skiing. That was really neat to all be together again. One of the couples coming from Coquitlam.
That's wonderful. And now you have like 3 generations probably in that group, do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful.
Right.
I hear a bird twittering in the background of somebody's microphone. Is that yours, Elaine?
It probably was, Jim. Sorry about that. I'll make sure that
No.
we're muted.
I love it.
Now a plane's going over. That's not quite the same.
I'd like somebody to tell us what
Which
kind of a
bird
bird
it
it
is.
is.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'll share a God moment. First of all, to say last Sunday, I was absent from church, and that was because I was on my return trip from the Lower Mainland. And so through that week, I had many, many God moments as I connected with family and friends. But I really want to share a different God moment. A couple of days ago, I was visiting Muriel. And as we always do before we part, we listen to 2 or 3 pieces of music. And I have a little Bluetooth speaker that I hook up to my cell phone or my tablet. There's a woman in the facility, her name is Sharon. And Sharon has always been very quiet, virtually nonverbal. She often stops into Muriel's room and she'll just stand and stare. There's no expression or anything else. The other day when Muriel and I were playing a piece of music, it happened to be Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton, Islands of the Stream. And Sharon came in the door and she stayed and she smiled. It's the first time I saw her smiling. And she started dancing. And I just saw a totally different side of that person as she heard some music. And she stayed for several minutes before leaving. And I just thought, you know, just a little thing like that can change a person so dramatically. I was just amazed. Yeah, it was a very, very satisfying moment to see a bit of joy in that person's face.
Indeed, Tom. Yeah. The power of music and what that unlocked for Sharon.
Yeah. She wanted to dance with me. I wouldn't and I couldn't, but she was just, I can hardly describe the reaction. It was so different from what I had seen over the past several months as I've been visiting there.
Mm-hmm. That's wonderful. Thank you, Tom. Any other God moments?
I'll jump on here for a second. I had my mom visiting for the last 2 weeks, and she doesn't get around that well anymore. And so she's been locked up through COVID, and so it was really nice to have her down here visiting. And I took her to her only living sister-in-law. She's lost her mom and dad and her 4 other brothers and sisters, and so it's her only living sister-in-law. But it was so good to see them together, and they're still so vibrant in their mind. Played 8 Scrabble games, and yeah, took her to the hot springs, and it was just so good to get her out of her home. It made me just feel so good to be able to do that for her and just give her a break from being in her home.
Absolutely. Thank you, Kathy. Good memories.
I just would like to say that last week there was a knock on the door that we weren't expecting, and the door opened and there was our son, grandson, great grandson, and a step granddaughter. And they said, "Oh, we're here to take you for dinner." Well, it was such a treat. But what we noticed is with the 3 generations of fellows when they walked in, how similar they are in different ways. You don't realize how the characteristics go down. Anyway, it was just great and we certainly enjoyed it.
It's like part of a tree of life, right, May? Like a family tree.
Yeah.
Yep. Branches and branches. Mm-hmm. Thanks, May. Any other God moments?
Well, there's a couple. It's okay, Margaret, I took it off.
Go ahead,
Hi.
Mike.
Sorry, Margaret and I are fighting over how to turn off the mute.
Got the floor now.
Well, I do want to say how much I enjoyed kayaking with you on Monday, and seeing the water lilies are blooming
At Kaloya.
at Kaloya were just really nice. And Margaret and I had been out the previous week, and but the other thing I wanted to mention is people have been telling such personal stories, so this may seem a little off, but Margaret had listened to Q and they were talking about the documentary called Summer of Soul. And it's basically a documentary. It was a concert that took place in Harlem the same summer as Woodstock. 1969, same summer as Woodstock, about 100 miles away, but it was all Black musicians. And the whole thing was videotaped, like recorded, but then it just got buried in someone's basement. And this is the first time anybody's ever seen these performances. And it's like 19-year-old Stevie Wonder and Nina Simone.
Sly and the Family Stone.
I saw it, Adam. Did you see it?
No, but it's really high on my list.
Oh my gosh.
It's really, it was quite, and a lot of these performers came out of a gospel tradition. And so there was, it was a real mix of gospel music, R&B, psychedelic, 1969, whatever. But it was just really kind of a profoundly moving documentary. And they interviewed a lot of people who were there in 1969, talking about what it felt like to be with so many other Black people. A lot of people said, I had never seen so many other Black people in my entire life. And it was just, it was quite, I found it very moving. And the music, of course, was phenomenal. It was just phenomenal.
It's on Disney Plus if you happen to get that, but I'm not sure how else you might see this documentary. It's called Summer of Soul. And honestly, it's still very relevant today, to see it. Yeah.
Did you hear about it on CBC, did you say?
On Q, yeah.
I wonder if it would be some kind of if we looked on that website.
Yeah, he interviewed, who's that Black singer? They're with a family. Oh, no, her name has gone out of my head, but she was the one being interviewed about it. And
Staten Sisters.
No, something.
Well, thanks for letting us know about that.
Somehow it would be great to see it. It's very moving. Yeah.
Okay.
So that was our God moment. One of our God moments.
Can I add the last God moment? Just seeing Mike talking here reminds me that, Mike, this last week was your 32nd anniversary of new life, I think, with your double lung transplant.
It was 31, actually.
Amazing.
But that still counts as being big.
Yeah. He's on to his 32nd
cystic fibrosis, right?
Yeah.
Cystic fibrosis.
So, now truly have more than doubled my life. Because yeah, I've had the new lungs longer than I had the first lungs. So
That's wonderful. And thank you, Mike and Margaret, for the opportunity to kayak on Monday. Oh my gosh, Mike's an amazing kayak teacher. Yep, you just get in with Mike and off you go. You know, these are where the foot pedals are, and it was just wonderful. Like it was just like glass, the water that morning. Yep, until we went around the cove, and then it got a little choppier. So, but that was good learning for me. Thank you both. Okay. So I think we're going to turn our attentions to the lighting of our candles. So let us light our candles together. The candle dances with the presence of the Spirit, reminding us of the warmth of community that shines across our spaces this day. As we begin, let's take a moment for some quiet reflection and centering prayer. Come away and rest a while. We hear these words of invitation this morning. In our varied circumstances, the experiences of our week that may have us feeling joyful and enlivened, or weary and despairing. Let us remember the value of vacation, the breaks from the ordinary, the mundane, the routines that perhaps prevent us from seeing our wonderful creation, the turning of the world. May we cherish a special and set apart time to reconnect with those people and things that bring us joy. And may we start here in this time together. We lift our hearts to you, Holy One. Amen. Our opening hymn this morning is from More Voices, Draw the Circle Wide.
Draw the circle wide, draw it wider still. Let this be our song, no one stands alone, standing side by side.
Okay, I'm going to invite Jim Taylor to unmute his microphone and share in today's reading with us. Jim.
I'm trying to unmute. There's my microphone. Okay. So there are, this is one reading from one chapter of Mark's gospel, but it's two instances of Jesus responding to need. And somehow or other, I don't think we often pay much attention to these little instances, because in between them, Mark tells two stories that are always preached about: the feeding of the 5,000 and Jesus walking in water. But these two stories talk about the introduction to those situations, about Jesus responding to people's needs. It suggests that he didn't have a predetermined plan he had to stick to. He and his disciples needed time to themselves. But when people's real needs emerged, he set his own agenda aside and responded to what their needs were. So this is from Mark chapter 6, verses 30 to 34. The apostles who had been sent out into the villages returned to Jesus and told him everything they had done and taught. Many people were coming and going, so there was no time to eat. He said to the apostles, "Come by yourself to a secluded place and let's rest for a while." So they departed in a boat by themselves for a deserted place. But many people saw them leaving and recognized them, and so the people ran ahead from all the cities and arrived before the disciples did. When Jesus arrived and saw a large crowd, he had compassion on them, because they were like sheep without a shepherd, and so he began to teach them many things. And then that follows with the feeding of the 5,000. And then later in the same chapter, now verses 53 to 56, when Jesus and his disciples had crossed the lake, they landed at Kessler and anchored the boat and came ashore. People immediately recognized Jesus and ran around the whole region, bringing sick people on their mats to wherever they heard he was. Wherever he went, villages, cities, farming communities, they'd place the sick in the marketplace and beg him to allow them to touch even the hem of his clothing. And everyone who touched him was healed. I don't have the words. Joan, can you?
May these words open us to Spirit's presence, and may wisdom,
come to us today.
Thank you, Jim. I have enjoyed this past week chatting with some of you about your recent vacations and reuniting with family and friends that you haven't connected with since before COVID. I wonder how this vacation season will be different for us, given we are beginning to see the light at the end of the COVID tunnel and start coming out the other side of this pandemic. How have the travel events of this past month or so, and those you are planning to take, how do they feel different in this summer of 2021? I've been pondering the spirituality of vacation, which came easily to me, seeing as how I start my own holiday the week after next. Growing up, my farming family didn't take regular vacations away. It was just too hard. The typical summer season was the busiest time of year for my parents, with my dad on the land and my mom in the garden. So my recollection of holiday was to go to our grandparents or to visit cousins in the city for a few days. The change of scenery was such an adventure, and the opportunity to meet different people and experience different things. As an adult, I have not traveled very far. My family lived a province away from our parents and siblings, and our summer plans were always a given that we would travel to Saskatchewan for 2 weeks to visit and reconnect with the homeland. Today, I feel very blessed to be on a regular basis to live in this beautiful place of the Okanagan. I often have the experience of doing things with you all that makes me feel like I'm on holidays, but I live here. Maybe you know this experience also. And I'm grateful, so grateful for all the opportunities that you afford me to make the most of my living here in the Okanagan. And your travel advice to me is always appreciated. Most recently, during this heat wave, I was told when traveling uphill on a hot, hot day, turn off the air conditioning in the car and turn up the heater so as not to stall. Good advice. The work of Soren Kierkegaard came across my path this week. Kierkegaard was a 19th century Danish existentialist philosopher, theologian, and cultural critic who, despite rarely leaving his native Copenhagen, had much to say about the importance of a vacation. He was one of the first Christian thinkers to reflect on work and leisure from a modern perspective. From his reflection, there were three key features to the spirituality of the vacation. First, we resist what he calls the vice of busyness. Far be it from me to tell you all how to do your work and organize your days. But for Kierkegaard, and from his existentialist viewpoint, too much bustling activity can distract us from reaching our fullest potential, the productive selves we long to be. He calls this both a gift and a task, and is something we achieve through our attentiveness to it, like a project. So when one is consumed by busyness and not giving enough attention to our relationship with the divine, the holy, with the Spirit of God, we notice that. Secondly, Kierkegaard wrote that a vacation brings out a dependency on something other than ourselves. He acknowledges the need we have for diversions from the ordinariness of our routines, to accept these diversions when they arise and one's dependence on them. To recognize these needs as part of being creative beings and not neglect or reject the desire to break away from routine and our sense of the ordinary, and instead give in to the need for a vacation. There is an inherent sort of dependency when one considers travel. We put our hopes, our plans, our trust into the hands of others. We also realize this, and this is significant, that the world doesn't depend on us to keep it going. Think about this. What does it mean to give ourselves permission to skive off for a few hours, a few days, or a few weeks? We were made for rest and leisure time, just as we were for work and for purpose. For Kierkegaard, the vacation is all about connecting with our dependence on others and a diversion to notice and experience new things. What do you think? Thirdly, Soren found vacation was an opportunity to experience deep joy. His philosophical view was that we are all created equally and we are all equally imperfect. We experience the spirit of welcome when we take time away. And Soren says the pressure to make ourselves happy is removed. When relieved of our work, we can relax and savor our surroundings, new or familiar, and find joy in the company of family and friends. Agree or disagree with Kierkegaard as you wish. I think this Danish philosopher invites us to look at why we value vacation time. In our reading from Mark this morning, we pick up the story of the apostles returning after their first solo mission. They are full of stories of their work. Some elated and proud of what they were able to do. Others returned to Jesus, carrying the burdens of difficult experiences that didn't meet their expectations. Emotions are running high. They are hungry. They are tired. Jesus invites them to come away and rest a while. But as we heard in this story, this is easier said than done. The group tries to get away from the work, but the crowds continue to follow and close in. Despite all Kierkegaard gave me this week to think about, I do wonder about the message in our story's ending. Booking off time, seeking a getaway from our routine, that feeling like every day is a Saturday is so very important. We need to give ourselves permission to do this not only for our physical and emotional well-being, but for our spiritual as well. The pandemic has somewhat blurred our spaces of work, school, social gathering, and home, and has us viewing our leisure time in new ways and relishing in a new appreciation for the increasing return of freedoms and experiences we used to know. This story doesn't have a perfect happy holiday kind of ending. Despite Jesus's best intention to get away and spend some time with his disciples, compassion beckons. There are crowds to meet. Rest and restoration take on a different intention. Seek balance, dear friends. I hope you all find something or some place to get away to in these coming weeks. Everything will be here when you get back. Connect with creation and your place in it. Travel well. Find physical rest, spiritual restoration, and the enjoyment of deepening relationship with family and friends who accompany us. The people we meet, the places we visit are perhaps a God moment, reminding us we were created for such joy. May it be so. Amen. Thanks to Ken Armstrong for providing our musical meditation today. I'm going to invite Jim to once again unmute his microphone and share in our Minute for Mission story for today. Jim.
Just as a preamble, Alf Dumont was one of the first Native people, Indigenous people to be ordained as a minister in the United Church. And he tells about how he came to the church. He said His father was Roman Catholic, his mother was Anishinaabe, and they asked the priest serving their reserve to marry them, and the priest rejected their request, advising them to marry someone of their own kind. But a nearby United Church minister had a different response. He told the couple he had just two rules. If you have differences, talk them out and just try to get along. And Alf wrote, Dad and Mom said, I think we can do that. They brought together First Nations understanding and a non-First Nations understanding, and that's how I came to the church. He says in the book that he wrote about his life as a spiritual leader, while staying connected to his Indigenous spirituality. His memoir is The Other Side of the River, From Church Pew to Sweat Lodge. And it shares stories of how he walks between the two worlds of Indigenous and settler, traditional spirituality and Christianity. Part of the struggle in me, he writes, was to find out who I was as Anishinaabe and who I was as French, Irish, and English mix, he says. So his words often draw together these spiritual threads. Here's something else he wrote. There are 7 truths in some of the Anishinaabe teaching: love, courage, respect, humility, truth, wisdom, and honesty. And he says, you can't have one of those teachings or truths without having the other. You can't have respect without love. You can't have truth without humility. He says, I took those underlying teachings and applied them to the teachings, the Christian teachings on love. Love God, love your neighbor, love your enemy, love yourself. Again, you can't have one teaching without the other. You can't love God if you don't truly love yourself. You can't love your neighbor unless you truly love God. In an interview, Broadview magazine, that's the former United Church Observer, and please subscribe to Broadview, it's worth it. They asked Dumont to weigh in on the future of reconciliation. His comment was, part of the struggle has to do with learning to walk together again. It means being as open as we can. You bring a gift I don't have. I bring a gift you may not have. And as we share, we learn from the gifts we have been given. Your gifts through mission and service help support creation and publication of works like Alf Dumont's book, as well as webinar discussions and education events. Through listening and learning, we take important steps forward on the journey towards reconciliation.
Thanks, Jim. Now we'll turn our hearts and minds to the prayers of the people. So I invite you to bring to mind those circumstances, those individuals, yourselves, those things that are in need of prayer this morning. Let's pray. God of a deep and deepening peace, God of a calm that steadies our pace, may we take in this time before us whatever moment we need to gather ourselves for the journey ahead. The concerns we name, the burdens we ask for help with, and find comfort in knowing we are heard. I invite you now to unmute your microphone and share with one another your prayers of the people for this day.
This is not somebody in our congregation, and I don't suspect any of you will have any direct contact, but if it's possible for us to send good wishes and prayers to someone at a distance. I got a phone call this morning that Mary Caccione the wife of former school board trustee Rolly Caccione, is in the Dorchester residence in Kelowna, and on the outside, apparently she's doing very well, and her friend says that on the inside, she's a wreck. So if you could send good wishes to her.
We should pray for Denise, who is Harvey Walmsley's wife, and she not only is facing the death of Harvey, but now the entire estate and everything is coming down, will come down on her shoulders. And if we can support her, that would be just great.
I want to offer prayers for my friend Sandy. She has been in a lot of pain and finally got to an orthopedic surgeon and expected that she needed hip replacement, and could be a couple of years. And so it is not an option to be in pain for that long. Anyway, the news, I'm very impressed with this surgeon who wanted to look deeper. And in the end, wasn't sure. He didn't want to do a hip replacement unless he knew that was going to be helpful. So he started looking for autoimmune and all of her symptoms of autoimmune, which I really appreciate. And so she's on a different path. She's getting more testing. It's not necessarily going to be easier, and it could be healing. And so prayers for Sandy. Thank you.
I'd ask for thoughts and prayers this morning for my oldest and only surviving brother, Don, who's been hospitalized now for 12 days. He originally had a number of falls. They've done a significant amount of testing, and it looks now like it's a stroke that he's had. However, because again of our COVID situation, the first hospital was shut down because of COVID outbreak in Coquitlam. He was moved to Royal Columbian, and as luck would have it, he spent the last 10 days waiting for tests because guess what? Their testing is shut down because of a COVID outbreak. He is 88 years old. He's incredibly frail. I would ask for your thoughts and prayers for him. Unfortunately, I'm seriously concerned about what the outcome is going to be. Thank you.
I'm thinking about my sister Rebecca and brother-in-law Steve. Steve's in the hospital at the moment. I don't expect he'll be there. I don't think he'll be in too long, but he's really not doing well, and with the cancer. So anyways, just ongoing prayers for him.
I would ask prayers for all of our firefighters as I hear helicopters going down to the lake, and a pall of smoke entering the valley again. It's going to be such a hard summer for them. Keep them safe.
Prayers for the 5 men who died in that terrible construction accident downtown some days ago, and for their families.
We add to these petitions those in our community close to home and to our hearts. For the family and friends of Harvey Walmsley and Sharon Warner, following their passings this week, both from cancer. For Wally Ramirez, for Steve, Rebecca, and family, for Jade Dolman, for Bob Prosser, for Sharon, Catherine, and Stephen, for Vonda, for Hanny, for Matthew, for Peter, for Lynn Roaming, for Tom and Muriel, for those who care for our loved ones in assisted living facilities, for those who will visit food banks this week, for all who grieve the loss of children and the future they held. We gather all of these prayers into one, and in the silence of this space, pray the words that have the most meaning for us. Amen. Our closing hymn this morning is from Voices United. Jesus, you have come to the Lakeshore.
You
So for where we have been and where we are and where we will go. Blessings on the way, dear friends. Let's unmute our microphones and share with one another our words of sending forth. As we go, we will count our blessings.
As we go,
Count our
we'll
blessings.
count
We
our
count our blessings.
Embody our faith.
embody
Embody
our
Our
faith,
faith.
Live an authentic life.
Live
an
an
authentic life.
authentic life.
Never look down on the struggle for life.
Never look
Never
down
look
on
down
the struggle for life.
for life.
Notice behind every face, there is a soul at work.
Notice
Notice
behind
behind
every
every
face,
face
there is a soul at work.
And know that wherever we go,
And know that wherever we go,
the Spirit of God is already there.
The
the
Spirit
Spirit
of
of God
God
is already there.
Amen.
Amen.
Amen.